All right, people, let's continue. In a significant case directly confronting the issue of wartime emergency powers, Youngstown Steel and Tube Company versus Sawyer, 343 U.S. 579, the court refused to allow the president to rely upon implied constitutional powers during a crisis. The action at issue involved presidential seizure of steel plants in a manner apparently directly at odds with congressional policy. Justice Black's plurality opinion specifically acknowledges that if Congress delegates powers to the President for use during an emergency, those powers are absolutely valid within constitutional restraints on Congress's own power to do so. Concurring opinions appear to agree on this point. It should be noted, therefore, that all statutes in this compilation are precisely these kinds of specific congressional delegations of power. The 2,000-year-old problem of how a legislative body in a democratic republic may extend extraordinary powers for use by the executive during times of great crisis and dire emergency, but do so in ways assuring both that such necessary powers will be terminated immediately when the emergency has ended and that normal processes will be resumed, has not yet been resolved in this country. Too few are aware of the existence of emergency powers and their extent, and the problem has never been squarely faced. Summary views of the present status of emergency power statutes. A review of the laws passed since the first state of national emergency was declared in 1933 reveals a consistent pattern of lawmaking. It is a pattern showing that the Congress, through its own actions, transferred awesome magnitudes of power to the executive, ostensibly to meet the problems of governing effectively in times of great crisis. Since 1933, Congress has passed or recodified over 470 significant statutes delegating to the President powers that had been the prerogative and responsibility of the Congress since the beginning of the Republic. No charge can be sustained that the executive branch has usurped powers belonging to the legislative branch. On the contrary, the transfer of power has been in accord with the due process of normal legislative procedures. It is fortunate that at this time that when the fears and tensions of the Cold War are giving way to relative peace and dente, is now national policy, Congress can assess the nature, quality, and effect of what has become known as emergency powers legislation. Emergency powers make up a relatively small but important body of statutes, some 470 significant provisions of law out of the total of tens of thousands that have been passed or recodified since 1933. Well, it's more than tens of thousands. But emergency powers laws are of such significance to civil liberties, to the operation of domestic and foreign commerce, and the general functioning of the U.S. government, that in microcosm they reflect dominant trends in the political, economic, and judicial life in the United States. A number of conclusions can be drawn from the Special Committee study and analysis of emergency powers laws now in effect. Congress has, in most important respects, except for the final action of floor debate and the formal passage of bills, permitted the executive branch to draft and in large measure to make the laws. This has occurred despite the constitutional responsibility conferred on Congress by Article 1, Section 8 of the Congress, which states that it is Congress that makes all laws. Well, it seems to me Congress just wanted to abrogate all responsibilities to the president. So if the crap hit the fan, it's the president that took it, not Congress. Congress had clean hands now because they refused to do their jobs. They refused to do their duty. That's my opinion, and my opinion only. I've got to be careful here. I don't even think being careful is going to help me. A number of conclusions can be drawn. All right, I said that. Most of the statutes pertaining to emergency powers were passed in times of extreme crisis. Bills drafted in the executive branch were sent to Congress by the President, and in the case of the most significant laws, that 8 on the books were approved with only the most perfunctory committee review and virtually no consideration of their effect on civil liberties or the delicate structure of the U.S. government of divided powers. For example, the economic measures that were passed in 1933 pursuant to the proclamation of March 5, 1933, by President Roosevelt asserting that a state of national emergency now existed, were enacted in the most turbulent circumstances. There was a total of only 8 hours of debate in both houses. There were no committee reports. Indeed, only one copy of the bill was available on the floor. Sorry, there's a typo in here. It says "and the floor." It should be "on the floor." This pattern of hasty, inadequate consideration was repeated during World War II when another group of laws with virtually significant and far-reaching implications was passed. It was repeated during the Korean War and again, in most recent memory, during the debate on the Tonkin Gulf resolution passed on August the 6th, 1964. On occasion, legislative history shows that during the limited debates that did take place, a few, but very few, objections were raised by senators and congressmen that expressed serious concerns about the lack of provision for congressional oversight. Their speeches raised great doubts about the wisdom of giving such open-ended authority to the president, with no practical procedural means to withdraw that authority once the time of emergency had passed. For example, one of the very first provisions passed in 1988 was the Emergency Banking Act, based upon Section 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917. The provisions gave to President Roosevelt, with the full approval of the Congress, the authority to control major aspects of the economy, an authority which had formerly been reserved to the Congress. A portion of that provision still in force is quoted here to illustrate the kind of open-ended authority Congress has given to the President during the past 40 years. During the time of war, it's B1. During the time of war or during any other period of national emergency declared by the President may, through any agency that he may designate or otherwise, and under such rules and regulations as he may prescribe, by means of instructions, licenses, or otherwise, A. Investigate, regulate, or prohibit any transactions in foreign exchange, transfers of credit or payments between, by, through, or to any banking institution, and the importing, exporting, hoarding, melting, or earmarking of gold or silver coin or bullion, currency, or securities. Don't they get redundant with all these words? And investigate, regulate, direct, and compel, nullify, void, prevent, or prohibit any acquisition, holding, withholding, use, transfer, withdrawal, transportation, importation, or exportation. I'm dying of breath here. Or dealing in or exercising any right, power, or privilege with respect to or transaction involving any property in which any foreign country or a national thereof has any interest, by any person, or with respect to any property subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, and any property or interest of any foreign country or national thereof shall vest when, as, and upon the terms directed by the President in such agency or person as may be designated from time to time by the President, and upon such terms and conditions shall be held, used, administered, liquidated, sold, or otherwise dealt with in the interest of and for the benefit of the United States. Damn, I hate lawyers. Why you gotta make